Good morning. Welcome to our adult Sunday school class for our second Sunday in September of 2025. Here we are on the 14th. We will be, as I go get my Bible that I left in the pulpit, in Numbers chapter 1. And before we get to Numbers chapter 1, Brother Clay had a question that he wanted to ask about. All yours, Brother Clay.
Just look over in verse 14. That would bring her to the wilderness. Is that what it said, wilderness?
Wilderness. Wilderness?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your question?
What do they mean by taking you out in the wilderness?
My understanding of that passage in Hosea chapter 2, verse 14, where the Lord says, I'll bring her out to the wilderness, basically out of the city where she's been whoring around. And into just as Israel was brought out of Egypt into the wilderness. And so I think, and it's interesting because we talk about, spiritually speaking, our wilderness journey, out from Egypt, aiming towards the promised land. I think this is part of the journey where he's wooing his bride back to him. And sometimes we have to leave the city behind us. Just like Hebrews 13, go outside the camp to meet him outside the city where Jesus was crucified outside the city. So too, we leave behind our Egypts, our whatever, where we've been allowing ourselves to be bought and sold in many different ways. We leave all that, come to meet him in the barrenness of the wilderness. And it is in that isolation with him that he provides for us, protects us, cares for us, and then brings us into his promised land. And so, which is the ultimate. So, and we'll have a taste of that, more than a taste of that, with the millennium with Jesus here in Jerusalem for 1,000 years. So I think that wilderness is in Hosea chapter 2, verse 14, is a reference to that, forsaking all, coming out to meet with him in that isolation with him in the wilderness, and then following his lead into the promised land. And that's why the Feast of Tabernacles is such a powerful, important feast. Because it is forsaking our homes and going out to pitch a tent, basically, and camp out with the Lord for a week in remembrance of what he did for that 40-year wilderness journey between Egypt and the Promised Land. So does that kind of help with the picture there? Yeah. So here in Numbers chapter 1, as we're going through the Bible timeline, we're not reading every chapter and verse word for word, but we are picking up some highlights as we are gearing up to see the Lord's people ready to depart from Mount Sinai after spending a good time there and getting ready to make their journey to the Promised Land with the Lord's lead. So that means we are looking at the scriptures here and the timeline and the globe courtesy of Google Earth and all of that. We are in the year 1445 BC. In fact, Numbers chapter 1 will tell us that it is the first day of the second month on the Hebrew calendar, which is the month of Iyar. So Iyar the first in 1445 BC for us works out to be about Thursday, April 28th. 1445 BC. So they left on Nisan the 15th, the day after the 14th, which was Passover. They left the next day, 1446 BC, took a 2-month journey to reach Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia, which is Jebel Makla in the Jebel Lawz range. They've been here for 10 months. They're about to hit their 11-month mark, and then they will take off and journey up and make their way to the Promised Land, which is Israel up there. So they're here at the foot of Mount Sinai, and took them 2 months to get to the wilderness of Sinai, another couple days to get to the mountain. So over a 60-day journey. So they've been parked here, as I said, for about 10 months now. And so at this snapshot moment in time, 1445 BC, we're in Middle Bronze Age, level 2B. China is being led by Emperor Yren of the Shang dynasty. Egypt is split, the weakened and devastated 13th dynasty after the Exodus events and the loss of Pharaoh Dudimos II. The 13th dynasty has now been pushed to the south, being led by Pharaoh Ibi something Matre. We don't have his whole name. This is their second intermediate period, a low point for them, after the high point of the Middle Kingdom with Joseph's Pharaoh, who was Amenemhat III, who had the dreams, And this is before what will later come about, which will be the new kingdom, which will have King Tut, and they're on the time of David, which will have Ramses the Great, not the Pharaoh of the Exodus. He's 500 years later, and he will be during the time frame of Solomon's son Rehoboam. He's actually the Shishak who invades Israel, Judah there. So in this intermediate period, a second intermediate period of Egypt, while the pharaohs of the 13th dynasty are pushed to the south, the pushers are these foreign outside invaders coming into the north, including the Amalekites who fought Israel here in Saudi Arabia and Rephidim. As Israel was coming out of Egypt, they are making their way on in too and joining up with others, taking advantage of the devastation. This is a very unique time frame in Egypt's history, and it fits the Exodus perfectly. Imagine that. So these foreigners, these outsiders, shepherd kings are known as Hyksos. And this is the makings of what will be the 14th dynasty. And their pharaoh leading them, these Hyksos foreigners, is Nubuseri Ya'amu. So that's what's happening in Egypt. Over in Babylon, modern Iraq, we've got King Amidatana, who is the great-grandson of Hammurabi. And we'll be talking about Hammurabi and his law code this morning, and getting to the comparisons with the law of Moses on Mount Sinai here. With the Lord's people at the foot of Mount Sinai, in the tribe of Judah, which is the line of Christ, we have Aminadab. I'm guessing his age to be about 99 by now, and his son Nahshon, I'm guessing his age to be about 40. Nahshon in this line of Christ is the 28th generation of Adam. He will be grandpa to Boaz and third great grandpa to David. So that sets the stage for us. Here we are, Thursday, April 28th, 1445 BC, getting ready to leave Sinai. Numbers chapter 1. Let's pick it up in the very first verse. Numbers chapter 1, verse 1. Now the Lord spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai, in the tent of meeting, on the first day of the second month in the second year after they'd come out of the land of Egypt, saying, take a census of all the congregation of the sons of Israel, by their families, by their fathers, by their households, according to the number of names, every male, head by head, from 20 years old and upward, whoever is able to go to war in Israel. You and Aaron shall count them by their armies. And we'll go on from there. So here's the Lord saying on this day, and so I appreciate Moses date stamping this here, first day of the second month in their second year. So Iyar, the first of 1445, for us, Thursday, April 28th. And so the Lord tells them, take account of those men who are of fighting age, able to go to war, and have them organized by their tribes and households and all that stuff. And it's here that we see, if we skip down to verse 7, as he goes through the different tribes, verse 7 of the tribe of Judah, who do we have? Nahshon, the son of Aminadab. So he's the leader who's going forward here. If you skip down to verse 10, of the sons of Joseph, of Ephraim, Elishama, the son of Ammihud. Elishama, there in the line of Ephraim, Elishama is Joshua's grandpa. So Joshua's grandpa is leading the tribe of Ephraim here, while we have the tribe of Judah being led by Nahshon. And then we get as we go on through the chapter, we get the counts from the different tribes, bringing us to verse 45. Numbers 1:45. So all the numbered men of the sons of Israel by their fathers' households, from 20 years old and upward, whoever was able to go to war in Israel, all the numbered men were 603,550. So if we pause and think about that, that's not all the men. That's all the men who are age 20 years old and upward, fighting age and able to fight. So if you think that's how many of the men there are in that category, then you think law of averages, equal number of women. Then you think children, 2.5 kids or what have you amongst them and their families. We can easily see 2.5 million people in the total congregation of the covenant nation of Israel here. And again, the mixed multitude of foreigners who joined themselves with them. And then as far as their organization, verse 52, so the sons of Israel shall camp, each man by his own camp, and each man by his own flag, according to their armies. So interesting to note here, their tribal organization. Keep in mind, Moses was a trained warrior in Egypt. And we have the records through Josephus and others of Moses going into battle against the kingdom of Cush to the south of Egypt and being very successful. And an angel just got their wings. And so we see here that Moses not only is giving them the law from God, but Moses is also preparing them for battle. They had their initial battle with the Amalekites attacking them and attacking their skirmishes and attacking from the rear. Now they're getting to move forward and be the conquering nation that the Lord has called them to be, and giving the boot to those nations who have, in an ungodly manner, defiled the land of God there in the promised land of Canaan. So those are highlights I wanted to bring out from Numbers chapter 1. Any reactions, thoughts, comments, questions on this and setting the stage here for where we're going? All good? All righty. Well, now let's go over to the book of Exodus, chapter 33, keeping in mind that these books of Moses, especially from the second half of Exodus and then including Leviticus and Numbers, there's a lot of overlap in the timeline of these books. They talk about things that are happening at the same time frame. So as they're getting ready to leave, this, while we saw the setup in Numbers 1, this is also covered in Exodus chapter 33. Interesting event that happens here, a statement by the Lord and reaction from the people. Now, keep in mind, the Lord has already seen the people through some of their complaining about food and water, some of their, the golden calf incident and all that stuff. So the Lord has already dealt with some unfaithfulness right off the get-go. And now the Lord's getting ready for them to move on from here, aiming towards the promised land. Look at what happens here. Exodus 33, first 6 verses. Exodus 33, verse 1. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Depart, go up from here, you and the people whom you have brought from the land of Egypt, to the land of which I swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, to your descendants I will give it. And I will send an angel before you, and I will drive out the Canaanite, the Amorite, the Hittite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite. Go up to a land flowing with milk and honey. For I will not go up in your midst, because you are an obstinate people, and I might destroy you on the way." Wow. So how do the people react to this? Verse 4. When the people heard this sad word, they went into mourning, and none of them put on his jewelry. For the Lord had said to Moses, "Say to the sons of Israel, you are an obstinate people. If I were to go up in your midst for just one moment, I would destroy you. So now take off your jewelry, that I may know what I shall do to you." So the sons of Israel stripped themselves of the jewelry from the mountain of Horeb onward. Pause right there. So one quick technical note on verse 6, then we'll get into the substance of these first 5 verses. The actual Hebrew there in verse 6, a lot of our translations might read from Mount Horeb onward. There's no such thing as Mount Horeb. It is not a synonym for Mount Sinai. Horeb is this region, and Sinai is the mountain within that region. In all of the Hebrew original wording, things happen on Mount Sinai. They happen in the region of Horeb. Mount Sinai is in that region. So the actual Hebrew in verse 6 is from the mountain of Horeb. The mountain of the region of Horeb is Mount Sinai in that region. So just making that distinction there. So verses 1 through 5. For the Lord, after all of this, after all they've agreed to, after all the time that's been spent here, he now says, "Go on, get up, I'll send my angel ahead of you, but I'm not riding alongside you, because I'd zap you if I did, because y'all are stubborn and obstinate." Wow. That's kind of a morale buster. Yeah. What do you think of reactions and thoughts on that? Yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's kind of a bummer, kind of
They can't see you.
yeah. I'm taking you to the glory of the promised land. I just can't look at you right now. Say it, Ash. Have we not felt that way before? If you're a parent. Yeah. So,
Go away, go away. Can't deal with you right now.
yep. But obviously, we know bigger picture, longer term, the Lord's grace and mercy and restoration and forgiveness and compassion far beyond our deserving or theirs. Scriptures say in Psalms and other places, his anger is but for a moment, his mercy endures for a lifetime. So things like that. So good things to be aware
Then, came from, brought you into this world, I'll take you out.
of. Right? And he, if anyone, could definitely say that for sure. So with that, let's talk about the law code of Hammurabi of Babylon, for which he is so famous. And let's talk about the law of Moses here, because it is a fact that the law code of Hammurabi came first before the law of Moses at Mount Sinai. And there are some similarities. So the common thought in the secular academic sphere is that Moses was copied, that it's the law of Moses in the Bible isn't very original, so to speak, that the brilliant law code of Hammurabi was the precedent. There's one law code we talked about beforehand, but it wasn't as empire-wide establishing as the code of Hammurabi was for Babylon. But let's talk about this. So there's an article I found that seemed to do a pretty good job of summing this up. evangelcs.org has this, the Code of Hammurabi versus the Law of Moses. So I'll share some quotes from that, and then we can talk about it. So here's some of the thoughts here. Part of what is so interesting about the Code of Hammurabi is how it compares and contrasts to the Law of Moses. Consider some areas of similarity. Justice. Given that the image of God is in all men, given that the law of God is inscribed on the hearts of men, it comes as no surprise that some of the laws in the law code are just. What's their point there? Because we're made in God's image and his imprint is on us, all humans, then it's not surprising that some humans, even if they're not following God, like Hammurabi was not, that they have some sense of what's right in the sight of God, that there's some human decency in some concepts there. So here's an example. Civil order. If a people would apply the codes of Hammurabi and Moses, each offers a recipe for civil order. Here's the phrase in the lex talionis, or the eye for an eye thing. The principle that a person who has injured another person is similarly injured in retribution. There's a lot of eye for an eye type language in the law code of Hammurabi, which also pops up in Moses too. And to be fair, there are more similarities than these. But of far more striking significance are the differences. Consider some of them. The sanctity of human life. In the Code of Hammurabi represents a lower view of human life than Moses. Not surprising, because the law of Moses came directly from God, the author of life. For instance, in the Code of Hammurabi, the consequence for theft is to repay 10 to 30 fold. If that's not possible, the thief is executed. That's never the case in Moses. The penalty for stealing is never death. Favoring the privileged versus protecting the oppressed. Protection of the oppressed is near to God's heart. Not so much with Hammurabi. Many of Hammurabi's laws favor the free and the wealthy. Kind of like the famous English Magna Carta. It's great if you're a nobleman, not so much if you're a peasant. But anyway. Justice. Though some of the Code of Hammurabi is just, much of it is eminently unjust. There is no injustice at all in the law of Moses. Mercy. The notion of mercy is exceedingly rare in Hammurabi, but appears with regularity in Moses. The focus on the laws. Vast majority of the Code of Hammurabi concerns money, property, and business transactions. While these are addressed in Moses, the focus on moral laws, loving and honoring God, taking care of man's relationship to God, are strong emphases in Moses. So these are but a few of the differences that pose real problems for those who try to argue that Moses borrowed from Hammurabi. The two codes of Hammurabi and Moses come from different starting points and points of authority. So that was that article on that. What do y'all think? Does that kind of help with that distinction, or can you kind of see that? Does that make sense? Yeah, especially one having human source and the other having a divine source. So yeah, that would be fitting. So y'all remember from last week that there was an available option for those who wanted to, but were not in a condition to partake of the Passover, that they had a makeup Passover available to them, where Passover would be held on the 14th day of the first month, so Nisan 14th. But if they were unclean because they had to touch a dead body or something like that, and were prevented from partaking of the Passover on Nisan the 14th, but otherwise they were ready, willing, and able, then they get a makeup Passover on the 14th day of the second month. So we move forward to IR the 14th, which for us would be Wednesday, May 11th of 1445 BC. And I'll refresh for us Numbers 9, verse 11, which we were in last week. Numbers 9:11. Numbers 9:11. In the second month, on the 14th day at twilight, they shall celebrate it. They shall eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. So they get to have their makeup Passover. And now this brings us to cracking open the book of Deuteronomy. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 1. Now, Deuteronomy takes place 38 years later from where we are now, but Moses refers back to this time frame. Deuteronomy is Moses' farewell address, basically, to the people who are going to cross the Jordan as he is not. And Deuteronomy, the name of Deuteronomy is a mistake. Now, keep in mind, scriptures are perfect. Scriptures were not originally written with these titles. The titles we have for these books in our Bible are given to them after the fact. And so Deuteronomy comes from Jerome in the 8400s, the Latin Vulgate, his translation of the Bible. And when he got to this one, he saw that, wow, here's kind of Moses's retelling of the law. So in his Latin, we get, and then the Greek from there and all that stuff. So in the Latin, we have Deuteronomy begins with DEU, that's two, for like the second time. And then in there we have nom, N-O-M, for law. So second telling of the law, Deuteronomy. The book of Deuteronomy is not Moses rehashing the law that was already given earlier in the Bible. There is plenty of brand new material in the book of Deuteronomy, law of God, that is not given earlier. So it is a false understanding to say that Deuteronomy is just a retelling or a second telling of the law. So the name Deuteronomy is a mistake. In the actual Hebrew original books and scrolls, and this was often the practice in the early age, Mesopotamia and all that stuff, books would be named after their first few words. These are the words that Moses spoke. So the name of the book would be something along those lines. And so, just a little trivia there for our understanding of Deuteronomy. So this is Moses. We're fast forwarding to him giving his farewell address to the people, but he's writing to them, reminding them of what happened back in our time where we are getting ready to leave Mount Sinai. So we'll actually pick up this morning, Deuteronomy chapter 1. Let's start in verse 6. We'll go 6 to 18. Deuteronomy 1, verse 6. Moses tells them, "The Lord our God spoke to us at Horeb, saying, 'You have stayed long enough at this mountain. Turn and set out on your journey. Go to the hill country of the Amorites, to all their neighbors in the Arabah, in the hill country, in the lowland, in the Negev, by the sea coast, the land of the Canaanites and Lebanon, as far as the great river, the river Euphrates. See, I have placed the land before you. Go and take possession of the land which the Lord swore to give to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, and their descendants after them. And I spoke to you at that time, saying, I am not able to endure you alone. The Lord your God has multiplied you, and behold, you are this day like the stars of heaven in number. May the Lord, the God of your fathers, increase you 1,000 times more than you are, and bless you, just as he has promised you. How can I alone endure the burden and the weight of you and your strife? Obtain for yourselves men who are wise, discerning, and informed from your tribes, and I will appoint them as your heads. And you answered me and said, the thing which you have said to do is good. So I took the heads of your tribes, wise and informed men, and appointed them as heads over you, commanders of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens, and officers for your tribes. Verse 16. Then I ordered your judges at that time, saying, hear the cases between your fellow countrymen and judge righteously between a person and his fellow countryman, or the stranger who is with him. You are not to show partiality in judgment. You shall hear the small and the great alike. You are not to be afraid of any person, for the judgment is God's. The case that is too difficult for you, you shall bring to me, and I will hear it. At that time, I commanded you to do all the things that you were to do. Pause there. So Moses confirming, starting in verse 6, the Lord told us to go and said, this is where we're aiming for. And that's when I told you, hey, it's great that you guys are a bunch of people and you're growing, and I want you to be even bigger than you are and more than you are, but I'm just one guy here. And so let's appoint from amongst yourselves folks to handle, and we can do it in hundreds, fifties, tens, etc. And y'all can handle things on those levels, bring it up the chain if you need to. And then if anything is too tough for any of y'all, bring it up and then I'll address it. And they said, hey, sounds great to us. And then he gives guidance to the judges to do righteously in their judgment, not to play favorites. Remember, it's under God that they're doing this. Don't fear man. Don't worry about anything else, but do right in your handling and deciding of these cases under the side of God. So this is one of the places in Scripture where we have the example and the precedent for our current court system today, as it's been established, where we have lower courts, appellate or appeals courts, circuit courts, and all stuff, finally up to the Supreme Court. And so our setup and system of government does have a scriptural basis and foundation. So reactions, thoughts, comments, questions on this passage from Deuteronomy chapter 1. All good? Pretty straightforward. Well, now the journey begins. We finally get to take off after 11 months now here at Mount Sinai. We will be in Numbers chapter 10. Saying bye-bye to Sinai. Numbers chapter 10, starting in verse 11. Let's see, Numbers 10, verse 11. Now, in the second year, in the second month, on the 20th of the month, the cloud was lifted from above the tabernacle of the testimony. Yay. And shoot over to verse 13. So they moved on for the first time in accordance with the command of the Lord through Moses. And so the 20th day of the second month, that's their month Iyar. So Iyar, the 20th in 1445 BC. For us, we're now Tuesday, May 17th of 1445 BC. They are breaking camp and marching away from Mount Sinai. One quick verse from the New Testament, Acts chapter 7, talks about them on the move here. So this is Stephen's testimony in Acts chapter 7, verse 44. Stephen confirms, our fathers had the tabernacle of testimony in the wilderness, just as he who spoke to Moses directed him to make it according to the pattern which he had seen. So they're breaking down the tabernacle. Each has their role and responsibility, and they're bringing it with them as they're marching. And when the cloud stops, they stop, set up camp, and they're there as long as the cloud is. The cloud starts to move, they pack up and start to move. And so we are in motion here. Here also in Numbers 10, we continue on. Let's go to, let's see, Numbers 15. Again, we see in verse 14, the flag of the camp of the sons of Judah by their armies set out first with Nahshon, the son of Amminadab, over its army. So they've got an arranged setup for the 12 tribes. They've got tribes broken up. We've got some in basically on the compass points, some on the north, some on the south, some on the east, and some on the west. Those are all assigned. The 12 tribes are split up. And then for those leading out, the ones leading out are being led by the tribe of Judah, heading out first. And Judah is being led by Amminadab here in the line of Christ. And so they're going forward here. And each one has their own flag as well. And we see again, as we saw in Numbers chapter 1, here in Numbers 10, verse 22, after these all are marching forward. Next, the flag of the camp of the sons of Ephraim by their army set out, with Elishama, the son of Ammihud, over its army. Again, Elishama, that's Joshua's grandpa there, so in that line. So those are all heading out, and they start marching away. So with this heading out, Dr. Glenn Fritz, who wrote those books that we've been following as on the itinerary here, he has this comment to share on their launching out. So after their 11-month stay at Mount Sinai, the Hebrews would have again used the Butina corridor. The Butina corridor is this reddish area along here. So here's the mountain range in the gray, Jebel Law's range, with Jebel Makla being Mount Sinai specifically. So they came up from Rephidim, following this Butina corridor, then cut in on the wilderness of Sin, going to Sinai, over here to Sinai. Now they're going to come back out, as he's saying, through this Butina corridor to proceed northward to what is now southern Jordan. I'm going to switch the map style here just to help illustrate this. So you see the barriers more readily. The black lines are modern nation boundaries. So we're in Saudi Arabia right now. We're going to leave Mount Sinai here. We're going to follow this Butina corridor up to going north up to what is now southern Jordan. So this side of the black line is Saudi Arabia. That side of the black line, this is the modern nation of Jordan. So here, the Hebrews cross westward into the Arava Valley via the Ezion Geber Pass. That's this thing here. Just above Aqaba, here's the Gulf of Aqaba right here. There's the Exodus Sea crossing. So now they're north of that, and they're following this along here. On their way to Kadesh, which is up here on the southern border of Canaan. So this is the modern land of Israel. And we can see again why in Hebrew, the Gulf of Aqaba, is called Yam Suf, because it is the sea of boundary. It is the boundary given of the nation of Israel. Israel is this pie wedge here. This is Egypt over here into the Sinai Peninsula. The nation of Israel, pie wedge, comes down here to actually be on the shore of the Yam Suf, the shore of the Gulf of Aqaba. So this is their boundary sea. That's what Yam Suf means, sea of boundary or sea of ending. So that all fits and makes sense. So the Israelites are following this red line, heading up to here. And this is Kadesh, where they'll send out the 12 spies. And then they'll eventually make it up north and cross over the Jordan River, and there's Jericho right there up in the north. So that's where we are aiming for with this journey, but we are setting out from down here. So everyone good? Reactions, thoughts, comments, questions? Fits the Bible, fits the geography, it all works. Straightforward. Okay, back to our satellite image here. So let's see, let's go ahead and pick up now verse 12. The sons of Israel set out on their journeys from the wilderness of Sinai. The cloud settled in the wilderness of Paran. So it's taking them up north here. Now let's skip down to verse 29. Now we have a conversation here. Then verse 29, then Moses said to Hobab, the son of Reuel, the Midianite, Moses' father-in-law. Let me pause right there. So this, looking at a family tree, the son of Moses' father-in-law. What would he be directly to Moses? Brother-in-law, absolutely right. So this is Moses' brother-in-law, brother of his wife. So Moses said to his brother-in-law, Hobab, son of Reuel, the Midianite, Moses' father-in-law, also known as Jethro, he says to his brother-in-law, we're setting out to the place of which the Lord said, I will give it to you. Come with us. We will do you good, for the Lord has promised good concerning Israel. But he said to him, I'll not come, but rather go to my own land and relatives. By the way, that Hebrew word land there is the same one used in the Tower of Babel when the people were divided and spread out across the land. Then he said, please do not leave us, since you know where we should camp in the wilderness, and you will be as eyes for us. So it will be, if you go with us, that whatever good the Lord does for us, we will do for you. And so Moses, remember, he's been here. He ran away from Egypt before and has been out here for 40 years before the burning bush when the Lord sent him back over. This is all new to Moses going up here. He doesn't know the area, but his brother-in-law does. So he's saying, hey, we could use your guidance here for all this. And so he's saying, I kind of want to go back. So we'll see how all that plays out. Now, as we're moving forward here, we go back to Exodus chapter 40. In fact, the ending of the book here, which is not the last thing that happens in Exodus. So we're not done with the book, but we're looking to the end of the book. Exodus chapter 40, verses 36 to 38. Last couple verses of Exodus. Exodus 40, verse 36, throughout their journeys, whenever the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the sons of Israel would set out. But if the cloud was not taken up, then they did not set out until the day when it was taken up. For throughout their journeys, the cloud of the Lord was on the tabernacle by day, and there was fire in it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel. And this is accompanied by Numbers chapter 9. Because Numbers 9. Numbers 8, Numbers 9. We could pick up in verse 22. Numbers 9:22, referring to how long the cloud stayed. Numbers 9:22, whether it was 2 days, a month, or a year, that the cloud lingered over the tabernacle, staying above it, the sons of Israel remained camped and did not set out. But when it was lifted, they did set out. At the command of the Lord, they camped. At the command of the Lord, they set out. They did what the Lord required in accordance with the command of the Lord through Moses. Now, doesn't that just sound great? The Lord says, go, we go. The Lord's still parked, so we're going to stay parked. Wherever the Lord is, that's where we're going to be. Doesn't get much simpler than that. So our lives just stay that simple, right? Whatever God's doing, that's where we're going to be. Whatever God's not doing, we're not going to go there. We're just going to stay with God, right? So life is simple for all of us, right? Yeah, aren't we glad he makes that easy? Well, he does. A lot of things we deal with aren't so easy. But the truth is, he just wants his people to be with him, and he will lead, he will move in his time. Sometimes we're ready to move forward, but he's not. He's able, but he knows some things need to fall in place. Keep in mind, as the leader, as the one on the throne, his viewpoint is different from ours. Did you know, just as an under shepherd, as the sheep with a bell around his neck, that the view from the pulpit to the congregation is different from the view from the pews looking up this way? Yeah, you get a different perspective. You see different things from that perspective. God from his throne, how much more, sees things we don't. So we trust and follow his lead. And so very, very important that the things we consider as a church, as his people, his congregation now, that we do it as we are in agreement together, all seeking that same God, all being led by that same Holy Spirit, coming together. We have a peace together, an agreement together that this is how the Lord is leading right now, or that we need to go in this direction, or that the Lord's not leading for anything to change right now. We're feeling the Lord sitting and staying still, so we're going to sit and stay still and let the Lord work on us in the meantime and go from there. So that's kind of a beautiful model there for us today in our lives with the physical reality of the Lord leading with this pillar of cloud and fire on their Exodus journeys here. So all good there? Well, they make it a whole 3 days out before trouble starts. And we'll be picking up in Numbers 10, going into Numbers 11. So 3 days out brings us to IR the 22nd, or for us, Thursday, May 19th now, 1445 BC, day 3 of the journey. And in these passages, there are 3 places mentioned in the scriptures: Taberah, Kibroth Hattava, and Hazeroth on their way to Paran. Now, in Dr. Glenn Fritz's book on the Exodus Mysteries, his main focus is the journey from the Exodus Sea to the mountain. But he does have an appendix at the end that has some of this stuff. And he's the one, this red line, this trail here is actually his. He gave it to me. So that was very kind of him. But I noticed that he didn't have specifics on these 3 places: Taberah, Kibroth Hattava, and Hazeroth. So I emailed him and asked him, said, hey, do you have, what would you I know there's not a lot of information in the Bible, but what would you ballpark are the coordinates for where these are? So I could kind of show you guys on the map. Hey, here's about where they are. Here's what he responded. And he emailed me. This is on August 30th of this year. He said, and I asked him 2 things. I asked him about those places. Then I asked him about this here. What's this loop right here on his trail that he has? Did they walk in a circle or what's going on? So here's Dr. Fritz from August 30th, very kindly responding, and I appreciate him very much. He says the loop represents 2 possible routes based on terrain, barriers, and corridors. He was actually on the ground mapping this all out, walking it all. And so considering the volume of people they have, they could have gone through here, or they could have had to go around across here. So those are 2 possible different ways. But they didn't go around in circles. They either were able to go straight here, or they had to go around. But those were 2 possible ways they could have gone. But then regarding the 3 cities, the 3 places, mentioned in the Bible, he says, I do not have enough data to specify latitude and longitude on locations for Taberah, Kibroth Hattava, Hazeroth. Keep in mind, this is a great point, the Hebrew multitude and their herds could have easily stretched out for 10 to 15 miles, depending on the terrain. So here's one group 15 miles long, here with 2.5 million people and their flocks and herds and all that stuff. Hence, some of the encampments would have been regions, not small points. So we can't necessarily pinpoint some things. Some things we know exactly where they are. Some things are just areas or regions. So that just made complete perfect sense to me. So since we don't have Taberah, Kibroth Hattava, and Hazeroth specifics on here, I have to give you something. So what I have are some sightseeing spots along the way here that we'll get to. But before we get to those, Numbers 10, let's pick up in verse 33. Numbers 10:33. So they moved on from the mountain of the Lord 3 days' journey, with the ark of the covenant of the Lord going on in front of them for 3 days to seek out a resting place for them. And the cloud of the Lord was over them by day when they set out from the camp. Then it came about when the ark set out that Moses said, Rise up, Lord, and may your enemies be scattered, and those who hate you flee from your presence. And when it came to rest, he said, Return, Lord, to the myriad thousands of Israel. Chapter 11, verse 3 verses. Now the people became like those who complain of adversity in the ears of the Lord, and the Lord heard them, and his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed some at the outskirts of the camp. The people then cried out to Moses, and Moses prayed to the Lord, and the fire died out. So that place was named Taberah, because the fire of the Lord burned among them. Taberah means the place for burning. And so that happened. And so that's about 3 days out from Mount Sinai. That happened here. We'll pause there at verse 3. And so I'll leave you with some of the sightseeing here. And we'll close up class for this morning. So just to give us a sense of the terrain they're going across here. Let's do this. Hi, fella. So this is actually right across from the cemetery. If we take a look at it here, where we have folks buried after the Golden Calf incident. Again, the red line is their trail. So they're leaving Mount Sinai coming off. Here's some imagery from this area right here. I don't know who he is. But as we're talking about desert, keep in mind, or excuse me, wilderness. Wilderness does not necessarily mean desert. It doesn't mean, abandoned, arid, and dry. It just means a wilderness. You're not in the city. It's separate from all of that. Bees in their honeycomb, flowers, lots of flowers. Yeah. Give us something different to look at for a change here. They're setting up camp there. Yeah. So I thought all that was pretty spiffy. So there is that. And that's actually a good stop to stop on for this morning. So they'll be passing by the cemetery on their way out and heading out towards Tabora. So on that note, again, we'll pick up here next week with their journey. But any other reactions, any other observations or questions on all that happened here with them getting ready to leave and launching out and making their way towards the promised land? Yeah.
Back to, you did ornament and ours said jewelry. So is that
Great question and a good question and observation. So Sister Carolyn noticed in the different translations, my New American Standard 2020 said jewelry, whereas Sister Carolyn's version, which translation do you have? New American Standard. Okay, so an earlier version, probably the 1995 version, it says ornaments. So they ornament themselves with jewelry. So that would fall as a synonym. So it's nice seeing different words being used to give us a slightly different taste and feel and connotation, but basically referring to the same thing. So as they ornament themselves with the jewelry, they're like, okay, well, that was kind of humbling. So we're going to take this off right now and walk humbly. So yeah, great, good question. Good stuff. Anything else from anyone? If not, we'll go ahead and stop our screen share for now and stop our recording, and we'll get ready to go before the Lord in song together.